Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful day today. Bonjour tout le monde. My name is Rechie Valdez, and I'm the Member of Parliament for Mississauga, Streetsville. It is my pleasure to welcome you here today. I want to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee, the ancestral lands of the Huron-Wendat, and the home to many diverse Indigenous peoples, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Today, the Honorable Marco Mendicino, Minister of Public Safety, will make a funding announcement under the initiative to take action against gun and gang violence, to support local organizations in Mississauga that work with children, youth, and young adults who are at risk of joining gangs, and to provide exit strategies for those already involved in gang activity. He will be joined by myself, the Honorable Michael Kerzner, Solicitor General for Ontario, the Honorable Kamal Khera, Minister of Seniors, Minister Sylvia Jones, Deputy Premier and Minister of Health, MP Mendicino, MP Equinder Gurhir, MP Ruby Sahota, MP Sonia Sidhu, and MPP Amarjo Sandhu. The Chief of Peel Regional Police, Nishan Duraiappah, and President of the Ontario Association of the Chiefs of Police. To give you an idea of how today's event will unfold, you will hear brief remarks from myself, Minister Marco Mendicino, Minister Kerzner, Chief Duraiappah, and Minister Khera, followed by a question and answer session. Pour vous donner un aperçu du déroulement de l'événement d'aujourd'hui, nous entendrons d'abord de brèves allocutions de moi-même, du ministre Mendicino, du ministre Kerzner, du Chief Duraiappah et de la ministre Khera, suivi d'une période de questions et de réponses. Earlier this morning, Minister Mendicino, accompanied by Minister Khera and Kerzner, Chief Duraiappah, and Deputy Chief Milanovic, met with stakeholders in the gun and gang prevention, anti-crime, and youth support spaces to discuss and hear about their work. We all understand that curbing the rise of gun and gang violence begins with preventative measures. Furthermore, we also know that we must provide strategies to reduce gun and gang violence for those already involved in these troubled activities. At every step, our government and Minister Marco Mendicino are working with local levels of government, police departments, and community members to ensure we keep our families and streets safe. I would like to call on my friend and colleague, the Honorable Marco, Minister of Public Safety, Minister Marco Mendicino, to unveil the important announcement which will continue to keep our children and neighborhoods safe right across our city. Minister, the mic is yours.
Well, good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. And as we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathered on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Wyandot. And I do want to take a moment as well to thank a few folks before we get into the thrust of my remarks today. Obviously, Rechie, thank you for inviting us to your riding here at Mississauga Streetsville. I'm going to come to some of my other colleagues here in a moment. I also want to thank you, Chief Duraiappah, for hosting us here at the headquarters of Peel Regional Police and for dialing up the good weather. Despite the fact that the Leafs lost last night, the sun is still shining. We're going to win 4 in a row. I want to take a moment to thank my friends and colleagues at the provincial level, Minister Kerzner, as well as Deputy Premier Sylvia Jones, both of whom with which we have a very strong working relationship when it comes to public safety. And then finally, I do want to say that in addition to Rechie, we also have some amazing colleagues here in Peel. We've got Minister Khera, we've got Mendicino, we've got Ruby Sahota. Am I missing Sonia Sidhu, Equinder? We've got just the most amazing team. Who are strong advocates for workers, for families, for retirees, for students, for Canadians at every stage of life. This is a team that is helping Canadians address the challenges around affordability, making good jobs, creating green and sustainable environment, and of course, fighting hard to make sure that we get the investments and the resources that we need to both prevent and stop violence from occurring in the first instance and keeping our communities safe. Last thing I'll just say is that yesterday we had the chance, Michael, you and I, along with Premier Ford, Chief Duraiappah, as well as OPP Commissioner Tom Carrick, who is here as well, to attend the annual Ontario Police Memorial Foundation ceremony. I do think it is important to take a moment to recognize the solidarity with which we stand with the families of Constables Pershala, Russell, Northrop, Hong, and of course the family of Constable Wilson, who is an historic addition to the names which are now etched in stone in the Ontario Memorial. I believe this underlines the ultimate sacrifice that the women and men who serve in uniform are prepared to and indeed do have to make when it comes to keeping our communities safe. And that is indeed a big part of the reason why we are here today. It is about public safety. And the folks who live in Mississauga and Brampton, just like every other community across Canada, deserve to be safe. They deserve to feel safe and be safe when they go to work, when they take their kids to the park or go to school, when they get on a bus or a subway, when they go to the mall or are just out for a walk. Et si nous savons que, dans l'ensemble, la plupart d'entre nous peuvent mener leur vie quotidienne en toute sécurité grâce au travail des forces de l'ordre et des premiers intervenants, la criminalité et la violence restent un défi. Il y a trop de fusillades, trop d'agressions à l'arme blanche, trop de crimes organisés, trop de violences domestiques. Le fait est qu'une victime est une victime de trop. We have our work cut out for us, and the federal government is tackling this challenge head on. We've got a plan, and we're taking action. I firmly believe that the only way we are going to reduce gun violence and to stop crime is if we move forward with three things: strong borders, strong laws and enforcement, and strong prevention. And it's only with that strong plan that is based on these three pillars that we can get guns off of our streets and prevent further loss. We're making solid progress on all of these fronts. Last month, in fact, less than 2 weeks ago, I hosted the United States Attorney General Garland and the Department of Homeland Security Mayorkas in Ottawa for a summit on fighting crime at the border. Together, we signed 4 agreements between Canadian and American law enforcement agencies that will help to increase our capacity to trace illegal guns, to jointly use new technology to go after ghost guns, which use 3D printer technology that is hard to detect, and to create more joint enforcement operations. The federal government has also invested nearly $500 million into the Canada Border Services Agency in just the last 2 years alone. Backed by these 2 initiatives, we've seized about 1,100 illegal firearms at the border in the last year, which is a record number. We're also passing stronger gun control laws. Last week, we introduced amendments to Bill C-21 to strengthen the national ban on AR-15 style assault firearms. These are guns that were designed for a battlefield and have no place whatsoever in our communities. Le projet de loi C-21 prévoit également un gel national des armes de poing, une peine maximale de 14 ans pour les trafiquants d'armes et l'introduction de protocoles drapeau rouge et drapeau jaune pour réduire les violences domestiques liées aux armes à feu. Il s'agit de la législation la plus solide en matière de contrôle des armes à feu depuis une génération, et nous allons y parvenir également. Which brings me to how we're supporting law enforcement and the important announcement I am here today to make. Before I do, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the extraordinary sacrifices of the people who serve in uniform. This has been an especially difficult time for the policing community, not only here in Ontario, but right across the country. I have attended the funerals for 10 police officers who've lost their lives in the line of duty. And at each service, I am struck by the outpouring of support from all over the country for the families. It is a sober reminder that just as police are there to keep us all safe, so too must all levels of government work together to be there to support them. And so it is for that reason that today I am very proud to announce that the Government of Canada is investing nearly $400 million to fight crime and violence under the renewed Guns and Gangs Action Fund. These federal funds will be distributed to the provinces and territories for the purpose of giving law enforcement the additional people, resources, and supports that they need to get the job done and to get the job done safely. Je suis fier d'annoncer aujourd'hui que le gouvernement du Canada investira près de 400 millions de dollars dans la lutte contre la criminalité et la violence dans le cadre du Fonds d'action contre les bandes criminalisées et les armes à feu renouvelées. Ces fonds fédéraux seront distribués aux provinces et aux territoires dans le but express de donner aux forces de l'ordre le personnel, les ressources et le soutien supplémentaire dont elles ont besoin pour faire le travail. Here in Ontario, I'm extremely excited to announce that the province will receive over $120 million of that. Now, this funding succeeds the initial Guns and Gangs Action Fund, which was first announced in 2017. We're building on the success of this program by nearly doubling its funding nationally. This funding is a game changer in our communities. It has already led to and will lead to more seizure of drugs, weapons, and cash, with a return on investment of over $7 for every $1 invested. And let me give you a few specific examples. Au Québec, ils ont utilisé ce programme pour soutenir le projet Centaure qui a permis de saisir près de 400 armes dans les plus grandes villes, près de 500 autres à la frontière, ainsi que 7 imprimantes 3D qui étaient utilisées pour fabriquer des armes fantômes dans les premiers 9 mois du programme. On the other side of the country, on the West Coast, the money has been used to support the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit of British Columbia. This is a dedicated police agency made up of officers seconded from across the province, which fight gun smuggling, drug trafficking, and other forms of organized crime. Just last week, they announced the conclusion of a major province-wide operation which saw gang patrols deployed to high-risk places at key times to intercept illegal contraband. Officers recovered large quantities of drugs, thousands of dollars stolen, thousands of dollars in stolen vehicles and property, and more in cash and an array of illegal weapons. On the back end, it's also being used to support the BC Prosecution Service to put criminals behind bars and to help the BC Forensic Firearms Laboratory link illegal guns to crimes. And finally, here in Ontario, the money is being used for both intervention and enforcement, supporting investigations by the Provincial Guns and Gangs Support Unit, as well as the community initiatives like the Indigenous Youth Gang Prevention and Intervention Program, among others. Today's announcement is going to help us build on this important work. With nearly double in funding, it will mean more investigations, more but equally more prevention so that we can stop crime before it starts. Now, of course, as I have said many times before, no single initiative can tackle the challenge of gun violence and crime alone. But today's announcement goes a very long way to supporting strong laws and enforcement. I can also assure everyone that Minister Lametti and I will be introducing new legislation to make changes to our bail system in the very near future, because we know we need to address repeat violent offenders, especially those who use guns and weapons. Strong borders, strong laws, and of course, strong prevention. We don't talk nearly enough about that final third pillar. We don't talk nearly enough about how it is that we need to address the root causes of crime, but that's exactly what we're doing at the federal level of government with the Building Safer Communities Fund. This is a $250 million federal program that is giving more resources to grassroots organizations so that they can offer more mental health supports and other services to stop crime before it starts. We recently made an announcement here not too long ago in the Peel region for $6.1 million, and I'm confident that those federal funds are going to be put to the best use to help organizations like Peel Children's Aid and, of course, the Peel Board Region of Education. I want to give a particular shout out to Mary Beth and Michelle, both of whom participated in a roundtable just before we started this announcement today, and for all of the work that they do in both providing a safe education for our young people and making sure that they stay on the right path. We need to keep moving forward because the status quo isn't acceptable. We need to keep Canadians safe. We need to make sure that we're investing in our borders. We need to suggest solutions and not just spout off slogans. So let's keep supporting law enforcement. Let's keep supporting the grassroots community leaders with whom we have an incredible partnership to prevent crime. Let's keep working with our American counterparts south of the border so that we can strengthen our borders. Strong borders, strong laws, strong prevention strategies. That's how we're going to keep everybody safe. And I want to thank everyone as well, you, Nish, Chief Duraiappah, for having us here today. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Minister. After hearing from our stakeholders and leaders this morning, it's critical and important for this announcement, and it's very timely, I know. I know that this funding will go a long way to provide preventative measures and provide necessary exit strategies needed to maintain safety and reduce both gang and gun crime. Next, I would like to invite Minister Michael Kerzner, the Solicitor General of the Province of Ontario, to share his remarks.
Good morning, ministers, federal ministers, parliamentarians, my colleague, Deputy Premier Jones. It's great to be here with Minister Mendicino and Chief Duraiappah and the phenomenal leadership here at Peel, and Commissioner Carrick and Deputy Solicitor General. And honored guests, everyone here, and especially the community partners. I want to give a shout out to the community partners, as you said, for giving us hope on our path forward. And thank you, Rob. C'est un grand honneur pour moi d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui. Qui dit Ontario sécuritaire dit Ontario fort. A safe Ontario is a strong Ontario, and that's exactly why we're here today. As I've said across the province, everyone has a right, has an equal right to feel safe in their own home and their community. Tous ont le droit de se sentir en sécurité chez ou dans leur collectivité. And enough is enough. The status quo is not working. Across Canada, people are not feeling safe in their communities, on transit, and going about their daily lives. And this is unacceptable. This is exactly why Ontario and our federal partners are taking action when it comes to protecting our public safety. And never in the history of Ontario has there been a provincial government that has cared as much about our public safety as our government under the leadership of Premier Ford. Premier Ford is championing public safety in Ontario, and we are working very collaboratively with our federal counterparts. And I want to thank Minister Mendicino and Minister Lametti. And just this past March, our government joined with our provincial and federal counterparts in Ottawa to continue to work together on matters of public safety. And Ontario is speaking with a united voice. Just a month ago, the Ontario legislature passed our government motion calling for meaningful bail reform. This is urgent and essential. And here in Ontario, we are doing our part. And I just want to highlight a few announcements that we've made in the past few weeks. Premier Ford and I announced that we are providing free tuition to all recruits who complete basic constable training at the Ontario Police College in Elmer. We're adding more spots for recruits so we can graduate approximately 2,000 cadets a year. This means more police officers trained. This means more boots on the ground to protect our communities. And Premier Ford and I announced a $112 million Ontario investment into strengthening bail compliance measures. We're helping police services across Ontario bolster dedicated bail compliance teams, and we're also expanding the OPP's repeat offender parole enforcement team to apprehend high-risk offenders who have breached and violated their conditions or are unlawfully at large. And last week, I announced that Ontario is cracking down on auto theft. We are cracking down hard with a $51 million investment. We're continuing to give the OPP and municipal police services the resources they need to fight auto theft. And as I said to the organized vehicle theft rings, and anyone else who's thinking about stealing a car, our message to you is clear. We're putting you on notice. We're putting you out of business. And yesterday, as Minister Mendicino said, we observed the 24th annual Ontario Police Memorial Ceremony. A ceremony that was personal to me in many ways. I too attended the funerals of the officers we've lost in this past year. It is a solemn reminder of the price that is tragically paid for public safety by those on the front line. They were all our heroes in life. We have lost this year in Ontario and across Canada too many officers, lives precious to the very fabric of who we are. As to where we stand and how we stand as a province and country, our Ontario and Canadian values are rooted with goodness and compassion. We have a shared duty to protect those who keep us safe, and I want to thank everyone who keeps our community safe every day. Je voudrais remercier chaque personne qui assure la sécurité de l'Ontario. And Ontario is investing, Ontario is acting, and today is about working together with the federal government to keep Ontario safe. Together we believe in our inherent right to live safely in our communities, to raise our families in our communities. Our commitment to our public safety is absolute and constant. As the Premier has said many times, and as I've echoed, we will always have the backs that everyone that keeps our province safe. Pour le Premier ministre de l'Ontario et pour moi, c'est personnel. Je suis fier de soutenir nos policiers et tous ceux qui assurent la sécurité de l'Ontario tous les jours. Let's recognize through partnership we make progress. We have done good work together, and there's more work to do. And I want to thank again my friend, Minister Mendicino, for our ongoing dialogue. And working with the federal government, Ontario and Ottawa have already invested over $200 million through the Guns, Gangs, and Violent Reduction Strategy. And this is making a difference. Every time the police seize dangerous drugs, take illegal guns off the street, or arrest a person who seeks to cause us harm, the gun and gang strategy is working. I want to give a special shout out to the leadership here at Peel for your work on Project Zucaritis. And recently you seized over $25 million, it's incredible, of illegal drugs off the street. And this was, in fact, the largest drug seizure ever in Peel. This is what's possible when governments support police services. And last week, I announced a new investment by Ontario of nearly $15 million directly into our gun and gang strategy. Today, Ontario is welcoming Canada's additional nationwide investment of $390 million, which will continue to support our province's gun, gangs, and violence reduction strategy. And this will build on the progress already made by supporting Ontario's Gun and Gangs Joint Task Forces operation and our provincial Gun and Gang Support Unit to assist with investigations and prosecutions. We joined together today to send a clear message. Ontario and Canada stand side by side in keeping communities safe. And again, a safe Ontario is a strong Ontario, and this means a strong Canada. Minister Mendicino, it is great to work with you and your colleagues to ensure the safety of our province and our country, because we believe in Ontario, and we believe in Canada, and we believe in our future, parce que nous croyons en notre province, et en notre pays, et en notre avenir. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Minister Kerzner. I would like now to ask Chief of Peel Regional Police, Chief Nish Duraiappah, and President of the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police to step up to the podium.
Good morning, and thank you, Minister Mendicino and Minister Kerzner, for choosing Peel Regional Police to be the host of this funding announcement. I'd also be remiss to not thank our various MPs from Peel that are here. Of course, Deputy Premier Sylvia Jones, Deputy Solicitor General Mario Di Tommaso, and my good friend, OPP Commissioner Thomas Carrique, and all of our law enforcement partners that are virtually here in support of this announcement. As the President of the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, it's my privilege to represent all the chiefs in Ontario and their police services, as well as all their civilian and sworn members that do remarkable work day in, day out. And I want to thank both Minister Mendicino and Minister Kerzner for recognizing that. It is really off the backs of all these individuals that public safety is achieved. Earlier this morning, we had an opportunity to have a conversation with a number of community partners who are also here with us that work across Peel Region and are replicated right across this province and right across this country to deliver programs and services that support the preventative work and that space that we know we really need to press into when we talk about gun and gang violence and getting upstream. As public safety and law enforcement agencies, we are committed to comprehensive and collaborative approaches to addressing violence in our communities. Today's announcement supports local initiatives to prevent gun and gang violence, and it provides the resources that our officers and our police services need to investigate and hold accountable those that victimize our communities right across this country. We know that guns and gang violence has a profound and devastating impact on our communities. The immense access to firearms has become more prevalent, as witnessed by the number of firearms located and seized every day by officers across Ontario who work diligently to protect our communities. Law enforcement agencies in this province are committed to removing firearms off our streets and disrupting criminal gang activity that is directly associated to the use of violence. In addition to the proactive efforts of frontline officers, investigative and specialized units from police agencies across Ontario perform the function of monitoring, intercepting, and removing firearms and hold those individuals accountable who are putting our communities at risk. I'd like to recognize the federal and provincial government's attention to this important issue, demonstrated by today's funding announcement. We look forward to our continued work together as it requires a multifaceted approach to protect public safety. Preventing firearms accessibility and violence requires collaboration of law enforcement agencies, all levels of government, and our community partners. Today's announcement is an example of how we've come together to combat gun and gang violence in our communities. Again, my thanks to members of the federal and provincial governments, Minister Mendicino, Minister Kerzner, and our community and law enforcement partners who are joining us today at Peel Regional Headquarters. Merci, thank you, miigwech.
Thank you, Chief Nitch. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and continued work towards keeping our region safe. Lastly, I would like to invite my friend and colleague, Minister Kamal Khera, to speak and say a few words.
Well, good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you, Rechie, for that kind introduction. It's so great to be here alongside my good friend and colleague, Minister Mendicino. It's always good to see you here in our region of Peel, alongside, of course, members of our Peel caucus, and of course, Provincial Minister Kerzner, Deputy Premier Jones, of course, Commissioner for OBP Thomas Correct, that's here. And I also want to begin by thanking our Peel Regional Chief of Police, Chief Nish, and for everyone here at the region of Peel, the Peel Regional Police, for hosting us here today. But more importantly, for all the work that you do every single day in keeping our Peel community safe. I also want to acknowledge the outstanding community organizations, the grassroots organizations that are here today for your outstanding service in making sure we're doing that proactive, preventative work of actually keeping youth out of getting into trouble. So I just want to say thank you for a really productive roundtable that we had on ways that we can continue to work together with all levels of government to make sure we keep our communities safe. Well, we all know when it comes to community safety, it is a top priority for every single one of us. Every single Canadian, no matter where they live, has a right to feel safe in their community and in their homes. And as a government, we're hard at work with all levels of government and police forces across the country to improve community safety, to address gun and gang violence. That's why our government has introduced some of the strongest gun control legislation in Canadian history. Additionally, we've been working with community organizations, Region of Peel, City of Brampton, and Peel Regional Police through other initiatives, such as the Building Safer Communities Fund, including the one that we announced earlier this year with an investment of over $6 million to fight guns and gang violence here in our community. But that alone is not enough. We know that when it comes to addressing crime, and especially gun and gang violence, there is no one tool which fits the issue. Instead, we need to be using every single tool available to us, and that is exactly what we're doing here today. Today's announcement of nearly $400 million will address the root causes of gun and gang violence by supporting youth and equipping them with the tools they need to thrive. We can and we will reduce the number of incidents of gun violence here in our community. Because at the end of the day, one life lost to gun violence is one too many. And I think it is incumbent upon all of us to seize every opportunity available to us to ensure the safety of our communities. And that is exactly what we're doing with this funding being announced today. And I know it will go a long way in keeping our communities safe. Once again, I want to thank all my colleagues here today, and especially thank Chief Nish and all the deputy chiefs that are present here today at the Peel Regional Headquarters, and to all the men and women that are here in uniform. We say thank you. Thank you for your service, and we'll continue to work together in keeping our communities safe. Merci, miigwech.
Thank you, Minister Khera, for your remarks. I will now hand the mic over to Gabriel Boderick, the Senior Special Assistant and the Regional Advisor of Ontario for the Office of the Minister of Public Safety, to open the floor to questions from the media.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining our announcement. We'll be now beginning question period. Please raise your hand. I'll make my way over to you. In the interest of several questions. In the interest of time, will be one question, one follow-up. Please state your name and the organization of which you will be representing. First up.
Yeah, for Minister Mendicino. Good morning, sir. The majority of firearms that the police seize, the majority of guns that are used in homicides, that are used in robberies, that are used in shootings, are illegal handguns. And they come a lot of times from organized crime from across the border. How does your long gun ban contribute to this initiative that you're introducing here today? Like, should there not be more focus on illegal guns as opposed to legal guns?
We are absolutely focused on going after criminals who use illegal guns to terrorize our communities. And the plan that we have outlined today focuses on three things: strong borders, strong laws and enforcement, and strong prevention. And you heard me say in my remarks that we met with the Americans, where we're strengthening the collaboration to stop illegal guns getting into the country. We're doing that by setting up agreements that will allow us to share intelligence so that we can bust up those organized criminal networks that traffic guns. We're doing it in a way that allows us to leverage new technology to go after ghost guns, which is a new phenomenon. And you're seeing the benefits of that collaboration in the form of joint enforcement operations like Operation Moneypenny, where just a few weeks back there were over 170 illegal guns that were seized. In addition to that, we're putting $450 million into the Canada Border Services agencies to strengthen the border. And then finally, today, the announcement that we're making comes under an anti-gun and gang initiative that was initiated in 2017. We're nearly doubling that fund so that we're seeing nearly $400 million roll out to law enforcement across the country. So here in Ontario, working closely with the government of Ontario, they're going to get about $121 million. That goes straight into law enforcement so that we can tackle criminals who would use guns. That's how we're going after it on that side. But I also just want to say one last thing, that it isn't just about strong borders and strong laws and enforcement. We also have to prevent. And the question we continue to get from you and others in the press does focus on the first two pillars. We don't talk enough about the incredible leadership that we see in the grassroots organizations, some of whom have been highlighted here today, to stop crime before it starts. And the federal government is also giving resources to them so that we can address the root causes of crime. We've got to do all three things, and that's what our plan is all about.
Thank you for that. My follow-up would be with regards to bail. Is there a reason why it appears that your government is hesitant to strengthen our bail laws? And I say that because I've spoken with senior police leaders across the country, and they are talking about this revolving door bail system. And oftentimes we report on crimes where somebody's committed a violent crime and they've just been released after committing a violent crime. So what is the hesitancy there? And if you look at that, one of the OPP officers that lost his life, perhaps he'd be alive today had that person accused of his murder was kept in custody. So where is the hesitation there? Root cause is important, I agree. But what about deterrence for those that are caught over and over again with guns and they're being released on a bail and they're committing the same crimes? You talk to any officer, they'll tell you the exact same thing. So what's your answer to that?
We're going to move forward with that bail reform package. You heard me say that too in the very near future. I can tell you something about working on the front lines of the criminal justice system. I worked in many bail courts over my nearly decade in the criminal justice system as a federal prosecutor. I know what the problem is. The folks that work here in Ontario and in law enforcement and community organization knows what the problem is. But we've got to make sure that we get those laws right. And so you can be sure that we are going to be bringing forward a package that will be responsive to the requests of our provincial and territorial counterparts. But I come back to the point that we need to continue to emphasize, which is that if you want to keep communities safe, yes, you need strong action at the borders. We're doing that. Yes, you need to support law enforcement. That's exactly what we're doing today by doubling a fund that is focused on guns and gangs and reversing those trends. But you also need to support the grassroots organizations who do the work in our communities to help protect young people who are most at risk, so that instead of choosing a path of crime, they choose the right path and give back. And I will continue to advocate for a plan that is based on those three pillars because it's a strong plan and it's the way we're going to reverse these trends and keep our community safe.
Bonjour, Anne-Marie Tricky avec Radio-Canada. Donc, une couple de questions pour vous, ministre. Pourquoi choisir de raccourcir les débats sur le projet de loi C-21 au Parlement? Et comment vous justifiez, en fait, ne pas laisser les parlementaires mieux étudier ce projet de loi-là?
D'abord, notre gouvernement est le gouvernement qui a introduit une bannière nationale sur les armes d'assaut il y a 3 ans, à mai 2020, il y a 3 ans. Et depuis les dernières 3 années, maintenant, il y a à peu près 2000 modèles de type d'armes d'assaut qui maintenant sont illégales. Ce que nous avons annoncé la dernière semaine est que le gouvernement va prendre les prochaines étapes pour renforcer cette bannière nationale sur la question d'armes d'assaut. Et on va faire ce travail ensemble avec les autres partis dans la Chambre des communes. C'est seulement les conservateurs, sous le leadership de Pierre Poilievre, qui veulent relégaliser les AR-15 style armes à feu. Dans notre avis, c'est une très mauvaise direction. Ça, c'est la raison qu'on va continuer de prendre d'actions concrètes sur les armes d'assaut, en respect aussi de le rapport final de la Commission de pertes massives qui a été publié il y a un mois de Nouvelle-Écosse.
Parfait, merci, ministre. Sinon, une autre question pour vous. Est-ce que ce que vous annoncez ce matin, c'est une façon, en fait, d'essayer de faire oublier les critiques contre votre projet de loi C-21 et l'abandon, justement, de la liste d'armes prohibées? Pensez-vous vraiment que ça va apaiser la colère des groupes, comme Poly se souvient, par exemple?
Écoute, j'ai beaucoup de respect pour le leadership de Poly se souvient. Je viens de bâtir une relation qui est basée sur confiance et respect. Je sais qu'il y a des préoccupations, mais je veux dire à elle, et on va continuer de garder une porte ouverte pour travailler ensemble avec Poly se souvient. Nous avons déjà accepté plein de propositions qui est réfléchir dans le projet de loi C-21. Il y a des autres suggestions. Par exemple, il faut prendre plus d'action sur la question de chargeurs avec grande capacité. Le gouvernement est dévoué de prendre d'autres actions avec un instrument administratif dans le court terme. Et il faut souligner qu'il y a plein des autres organismes qui sont des avocats pour la réglementation de les armes à feu, qui nous appuyons le projet de loi C-21. Pourquoi? Parce que c'est la plus forte législation dans plus d'une génération. Pourquoi? Parce que le projet de loi C-21 inclut un gel national pour les armes de poing. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Il y a 55 000 moins registrations d'armes de poing dans le pays dans la dernière année. Il y a des autres outils, par exemple le Red Flag et Yellow Flag, pour renforcer les tendances et le lier entre la violence intimée et la présence des armes à feu. Donc, il faut travailler ensemble. Et la grande majorité des Canadiennes et Canadiennes veulent des lois fortes sur la question des armes à feu. Et ça, c'est exactement ce que le gouvernement du Canada fait.
Good morning, Minister. This is Nitin Chopra from Prime Asia TV. As today's announcement is a welcoming step, they say it's better late than never. Minister Kerzner said that enough is enough. Minister Khera said one life lost is too many life lost, and we all agree. We have seen violence in schools. Young kids have guns in their hands. Transit violence we have seen. Carjacking, every 48 minutes, one car is being stolen here in Ontario. 13 premiers wrote to federal government. Many mayors, including Mayor Patrick Brown, wrote 2 years ago about the bail reform, changes in the criminal code. So again, the same question comes. It's too late now, and why we lost so many police officers, as you mentioned, on the line of duty. Where is the hindrance in the federal government to bring the bail reform, which is need of the hour today? Thank you.
Well, we're taking strong action against gun crime and violence, and I want to take a moment again, not only to thank my colleagues from Peel Caucus, and you heard from Minister Khera, who highlighted the over $6 million which we delivered to this region to prevent gun crime before it starts. I would also point out that the action that we are taking at the border with an investment of $450 million into the Canada Border Services Agencies is going to help us crack down not only on gun crime, but on the issue that you highlighted around auto thefts. That is an area of great concern, and one in which we have been remaining in close contact with Minister Kerzner, Deputy Premier Jones, the Premier, right across the country. And this is the culmination of all orders of government working together to reduce crime. Whether we're talking about gun crime, theft of property, including auto thefts, we are working together to make sure that we put in place the tools that are necessary to keep our communities safe. And then finally, on the question of bail reform, you've heard me say very clearly that we will be moving forward with a legislative package in the very short term, because I agree we do need to put a focus on repeat violent offenders, and that is something that we hope to have more to say about in the very short term.
Minister, we have seen that many criminals, they came to Canada, and we have a list also that they had FIRs against them. They entered Canada either on a study visa or on a visitor visa, and they are residing here. There is a list of those people. They had a criminal background back home in their countries. They came here, got their PR, and is that not a threat to our country to keep Canada safe? Why can't government catch them and deport them? Because they already came with the fake papers. There is a long list of those criminals hiding here in Canada, having a safe haven, because international media project Canada as a safe haven for these criminals. Why can't we deport them urgently? Thank you.
We have a very strong and progressive immigration system that ensures that people are screened for things like significant criminal backgrounds before they are granted status here. We have to continue to be vigilant about how it is that we do that screening. I would point to the fact that this is work that I do in close collaboration with Minister Fraser, Minister Jolie. But I also want to highlight that immigration is the bedrock of this country. And I'm the son of an immigrant family. The people that I am standing with here on this terrace, and indeed the vast majority of Canadians relate to immigration because it's who we are. And I will tell you that in my many travels, that every time I talk to a newcomer, they want to give back. And that is at the very core, that is at the very heart of who we are as Canadians. And this is not just about doing the right thing, it's about doing the smart thing. Immigration helps to address many of the labor shortages that we have in our economy. Immigration creates jobs. There are significant labor shortages in some of the most essential sectors, including in the healthcare sector. And it is newcomers who are helping to fill those shortages so that Canadians get the essential healthcare that they need. It is newcomers who are going to help us do the laboring and skills that are necessary to build more housing right across the country. That's why immigration is important. But I assure you that we work very closely to protect the integrity and the strength of that immigration so we continue to chart out a course that will drive prosperity and growth through it.
Hi, Minister. Megan Fitzpatrick from CBC News. I have a couple questions for you on behalf of my colleagues in our Parliament Hill Bureau. Just on the allegations of foreign interference. Why didn't the person filling in as your national security advisor at the time in 2021, Mike MacDonald, flag to your office that China talked about targeting a Canadian MP?
Well, just a clarification, the advisor I believe you're referring to is the National Security Intelligence Advisor, which reports to the Prime Minister. But let me just say a few very straightforward things. We take the issue of foreign interference very seriously. We particularly are concerned about the threats that foreign interference poses to our democratic institutions, including the MPs and the parliamentarians who work within those institutions. That's why when we learned about the specific reports around Mr. Chong, we went to the lengths of reaching out to him directly. I had a conversation with him, as did the Prime Minister. We offered him a briefing. We made sure that that briefing happened. We'll continue to work with him to make sure that he and his family is secure and safe as he does his job. And that isn't just true of Mr. Chong. That's true of all 338 MPs who work in the chamber who've got a right to be able to do their job that is free from foreign interference. Last week, I tabled a report, an annual report from CSIS. This is the 2022 annual report, where very transparently they pointed out that they have provided 49 proactive briefings to parliamentarians who work at the federal level of government. And we're doing that work to make sure that people are eyes wide open about where those threats are and how we can address and mitigate them. And the last thing I'll just say is that we're also working very closely with David Johnston, who's the Special Rapporteur. This is a former Governor General appointed by a Conservative Prime Minister, a distinguished Canadian, who is going to be putting forward concrete recommendations on how we can further strengthen our democratic institutions against the threats of foreign interference. And we have said since day one when we appointed him that we will respect whatever recommendations that he makes about this. But we will always be upfront, transparent with Canadians about how it is that we're doing this work, because that is critical to maintaining their trust and their confidence in these institutions.
Thank you. Who's accountable, though, for what happened to Mr. Chong and his family? Last week, you seemed to sort of point towards CSIS, but ultimately, who is it? Your office? Is it them? Like, who's responsible for sort of the breakdown here and what happened to Mr. Chong?
The person or persons who are most responsible for any threats that may have been made against Mr. Chong and his family are the hostile actors who are engineering them. And that is absolutely unacceptable. And we're going to continue to put in place, our government will, the additional powers and tools that are necessary to hold those hostile actors accountable. I would point out that it is our government that, since we took the reins in 2015, has been putting in place the building blocks of a concrete strategy to combat foreign interference. These are not superficial authorities. We're talking about new threat reduction measure powers, which were granted to CSIS. We're also putting in place the additional statutory committees and bodies like NCCOP, like NCIRA, so that we can be as upfront as possible with Canadians about how it is that we are combating foreign interference. But I also think it's important to highlight that we also have to respect the law, that me and the other members of the government, the Prime Minister, anyone who works in the national security space has a legal obligation under the Security of Information Act to ensure that classified information stays classified, because lives are at stake, including the members of Parliament who work in the House of Commons. And so we will be sure that we put in place all of these authorities so that we can protect the people that work in our democratic institutions, and that we are transparent with Canadians as to how we do this work.
All right, folks, this will be our last question for the morning.
To the Federal Minister, Jason Miller, Crime and Justice Reporter for the Toronto Star. One of the things that I've covered over the last several years is talking to the social network leaders, and they complain about the fact that they get one-year funding, it's never sustainable. They start initiatives, the youths fall off back into the community with nothing to do because the monies just don't come. You talked about hundreds of millions of dollars. It seems like a significant portion of that is going towards boots on the ground and touting the law enforcement side of things. What can you say about the commitment that there's a proportional fair share to social networks who really need this money? Because many of them are hearing of this money. I hear of $6 million that might be going towards them, but it's just not sustainable. That's what I hear. And that's a key problem, because many of the communities that these agencies support are the very communities where police are at the most. And the statistics show us that in terms of use of force, in terms of folks who are getting arrested and thrown behind bars, sir. So what can you say about fairness in funding and how much would be going towards social networking?
Well, I want to say two things in response. First, it cannot go without saying that the members of the policing community who serve in uniform have gone through a very difficult time. And having grieved with the families who've lost their loved ones, people who have a sworn obligation to protect our communities, we owe it to them to make sure that they get the support that they need. And that's what the announcement today is about acknowledging the reality that doing the hard work of keeping our communities safe has never been more challenging. And that is work that I'm doing in collaboration with Minister Kerzner, Deputy Premier Jones, the Premier himself, with the close relationship that we have with our Peel Regional Caucus. But I will always shout from the rooftops the leadership that we see from grassroots organizations in the work that they are doing to address the barriers which stand in the way of people who are at greatest risk of being exposed to criminal elements, so that they make the right choices and give back. And would point to the numerous announcements that the government is making under the $250 million Building Safer Communities Fund right across the country, including right here in Peel. And I would point to that as a very specific example on how we are ensuring sustainable funding. I mean, this is not just a one-year program. It is a 5-year commitment. And through that, we are able to provide some predictability and some certainty to people who work in educational spaces, to people who work in the mental health space, to people who work in providing extracurricular activities, whether it's in sports, arts, music. I have seen game-changing leadership right across the country. You know, we talked a little bit about making the leap from knowledge to wisdom in the roundtable this morning. The wisdom comes from the community. The wisdom comes from the people who serve as peers and mentors. And we recognize at the federal level of government that by investing in those people, that we are helping to save lives. And that by investing them in a sustainable way over a 5-year period, we are providing them with that predictability and that certainty so that they know that they're going to be able to fund those budgets going forward and help to save as many lives as possible.
And a follow-up, we've seen over the last several weeks, it's been one of the conversations on the agenda with young people, and not just young folks, but the attacks that have been happening on our transit system. Has there been any advancement in your initiatives or what you're looking into to assist the province and assist transit systems across the country with making us feel safer?
I share the concerns around some of the spikes that we've seen in violence in our public transit. And what I would say to build on the last answer is that the solution to keeping our transit safe, our community safe, has to be whole of government, at every level of government. So yes, strong action at the borders. Yes, strong support for laws and law enforcement. But the work around preventing crime is being done not only within my portfolio at the Building Safer Communities Fund, but equally by many other peers that we work with. You know, I think about the work that Carolyn Bennett is doing in mental health. I think about the work that Ahmed Hussein is doing under the National Housing Strategy. I think about the work that Marcy Ian is doing in WAGE to make sure that women and young girls who are disproportionately victims when it comes to domestic abuse are getting the supports that they need. You know, Minister Ian is actioning over $500 million. I think it's roughly $600 million to give that kind of sustainable funding. So it's only if you address these social determinants of crime through a comprehensive approach that builds capacity by providing more homes for Canadians that are affordable and safe, by providing them with mental health supports to address the challenges coming out of a 2-year pandemic, by making sure that we address the realities around domestic and intimate partner violence. It's only if we do that work that we can stop crime before it starts. And that gets back to the 3 pillars that I was speaking about: strong borders, strong laws and enforcement, and strong prevention.
Sorry, boss. One more question over here from Global National.
Good morning, Minister. Michael Chung said in the House of Commons that in the 2021 CSIS report outlining Chinese threats that there were multiple MPs who were allegedly targeted. Have the other MPs been informed they were targets?
Well, and this is important because we're getting these questions now fairly frequently, and I understand why you and other members of the press are asking them, but it is important to highlight that the answers to these questions around the who, what, where, and why as it relates to specific individuals, are guided by the law under the Security of Information Act. I have a legal obligation under the law to respect the parameters within which we keep information classified, not just because it's an abstract legal principle, but to protect the people that work in those agencies who do extraordinary work, but also to protect the people that work in the House of Commons, the parliamentarians. What I can tell you is that very transparently, we did meet with Mr. Chong. We provided him a briefing. And as you heard me say earlier, the 2022 CSIS report talks about proactive briefings which have been provided to 49 parliamentarians. And we will continue to provide support to them and any other parliamentarian who may have been confronted with a report of foreign interference, so that they can do their jobs, so that their families can be safe, so that we can all continue to uphold our democracy.
The Prime Minister has said that your government is considering the impacts of kicking out the Chinese diplomat associated with the Michael Chong story out of Canada. What specific impacts are you concerned about?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that look, the Prime Minister and Minister Joly have made it very clear that all options are on the table when it comes to sanctioning any foreign actor who may have engaged in foreign interference. And this is consistent with Canada's strong record when it comes to our relationships with any foreign country. The reality is that there are well and long established conventions around what is fair game when it comes to diplomatic activity. And what goes beyond that. And that's why the public consultations that I'm leading right now in the creation of a foreign influence transparency regime are so important. And I've been hosting conversations and having important dialogue with communities right across the country. They're concerned about being the subjects of transnational repression. They're concerned about being targeted by hostile state actors. And the whole point of foreign interference is to marginalize and stigmatize those individuals, to crowd them out of public life, and that's fundamentally wrong. But there is, I believe, an emerging and strong consensus that we need this tool so that we can be transparent around who's engaging in what legitimate diplomatic activity here in Canadian soil, but equally to draw a bright line between those activities and the activities that exceed it. And I would point out lastly that Minister Joly, her department convened the Chinese ambassador last week to make those boundaries very clear. And consistent with the action that this government took during the two Michaels, we will always stand up for human rights. We will always stand up for principles which are recognized that govern relationships between Canada and other foreign actors. And that is work that I am confident that we will continue to be guided by.
Thus concludes our question period. Thank you for joining us today. Take care.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you.